Tech Ed. We're back with another video for our club series. Today we'll interview Ben, president of TAMS CSO, the computer science organization.
So to start, can you introduce yourself and tell us what CSO is?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently a senior at the Texas Academy of Math and Science. And so I'm the president of the computer science organization, as you previously stated. And what this club is basically a sort of combination of all fields of computer science, from cybersecurity to networking to, artificial intelligence, competitive programming, basically anything that you might think could be related to CS, the computer science organization actually covers. And so in general, we try to help promote certain events like competitions, hackathons, in addition to providing resources for people to sort of, pursue their passions and what they like.
What committees do you have and how can people get involved?
So committees tend to change year by year, but hopefully we will, the committees we've established this year will continue to, just extend throughout the next couple of years. So right now, some of the ones we had, this is pre-COVID, we had one called Good Samaritan, which is basically a volunteering program where TAMS students will help out, senior people with tech issues, not necessarily hardware. It could just be software or like, explaining what a Windows update is. It's pretty chilled and relaxed, though I will say you do have to go to an orientation because once again, this is you are dealing with elderly people, so certain medical emergencies might occur. But that got replaced with, I believe, Missing Maps is what it's called now. And you basically help out Microsoft's open source mapping software, identify certain bridges and those sort of things. And other committees, obviously there's Tech Ed, this committee, where hopefully this committee will, provide information that not only prospective students would enjoy, but current TAM students and even alumni, just in case they just want to see what happened to their club. And so yeah, Tech Ed, basically the goal is to produce informative media, though some of it may be on a more comedic side. Yeah, there's a lot of committees. There's an open source committee which strives to sort of help develop an open source sort of atmosphere at TAMS, though it's pretty hard to really be quantitative with open source. So that's the sort of thing which I don't think will be a committee, and just because it's hard to give out hours for that. Like the main purpose of the committee is to provide some sort of service, and open source committee doesn't really have a lot. sorry committee heads, but yeah. There's also another one called API Masters, which strives to sort of inform people on what APIs are, how to use them, the sort of protocols, so those sort of things. Yeah, it exists. There's one called Girls Who Code, which is pretty self-explanatory, and I'm hoping because of COVID, there's some struggles right now, but hopefully next year I'll be up and running. There's the isCSO committee, actually. The competitive programming side, TAMS is really good at it, actually. And so recently this year, we've actually had quite a few people placing in high positions. So off the top of my head, I do know somebody named Daniel who placed incredibly high in, I believe, Battle of the Brains individually. At Frozen Eagle, we've done pretty well. But of course, during COVID, it's pretty hard to go to many competitions. But yeah, the isCSO committee, also self-explanatory. They aim to help people get comfortable with the isCSO format, how to solve problems and that kind of thing. And they are very good at what they do. Let's see. I guess there's also, this isn't a committee, but it's something called Hack TAMS, which is a hackathon that our club actually helps organize. And so what a hackathon is, it's sort of like a period of time where the task is to start, design, and finish a project. That it doesn't have to be software either. You can create, a simple, let's say, for example, a cane that detects when the user has fallen over. And those sort of things are also valid at a hackathon. And so we hosted our own 2 weeks ago. And yeah, it went really well. We had over 100, 200 registrations, 100 plus, members, participants. That's another thing that CSO also does. Like, it's not a committee, but it is pretty cool.
Okay, so you've already mentioned a lot of these, but what kinds of competitions are there?
Yeah, so pre-COVID, the big ones I can list off the top of my head were Battle of the Branch, Frozen Eagle, Code Wars, and I think Lockheed Martin was another one we do. I'm not too sure since COVID hit before Lockheed Martin could even, really get going. But those are like the four major ones. And of course there's isCSO, but that's a sort of different format. And so for those who don't know, isCSO stands for the USA Computer Science Olympiad. And so it's sort of like, so many people will be familiar with the Olympics. isCSO is like that, except for high school students within competitive programming. And so you'll be given a lot of problems and you have to program a solution for them. And so there are multiple tiers. So there's bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. I believe there's more, but I'm not too familiar with the process. But I do know that TAMS does have isCSO Platinum members throughout the years.
So, is there any kind of preparation people need to do to join CSO?
Not really. Like with any other clubs, once you join TAMS, you're sort of part of every club. It's really just you get to pick and choose. So what a lot of seniors recommend is that you go to every single club introductory general assembly, which is basically just an hour where clubs just sort of explain what their club is and what they do. And in terms of preparation, like not preparation, yeah, I mean, there's no membership fee or anything because that's just the way clubs work at TAMS. But in terms of like computer science background, you don't need any. We're pretty beginner friendly, especially since some TAMS students come into the program without any programming knowledge.
Okay, so what languages will we use for CS at TAMS?
Yeah, that's another great question, especially since there are a lot new tracks opening up for the class of, I believe, 23. And initially there was actually going to be 2 tracks for you guys, class of 2022. That's a lot of twos. But traditionally, CSE 1030 and 1040 were taught in C++. They still will be, hopefully, in the future. But there was another new cybersecurity track that was supposed to be opened up that was 1035, 1045 that actually taught in Python for the first semester. But of course, scheduling conflicts for TAM students, so no one can really take that. But next, for the class of 23, it should still be C++, but I do know there might be some tracks that start off in Python or JavaScript. I'm not too familiar with them, once again, because I'm not the class of 23. But in general, it will be C++.
So, what about operating systems? Which ones will we use?
Yeah, that's actually another great question. So to preface this, they will actually guide you through the operating system of Linux, which is what TAM students, well, not just TAM students, what all students will use when you're programming your labs, lab assignments, and sometimes I'm not too familiar with, and it's a little bit hazy in my memory, but sometimes you may even need to log on to the Linux server for your assessments, which is basically the same thing as a test, but it's just for computer science. And so you learn how to use, like the very first lab is how to navigate Linux, especially through a terminal, which is basically just text. There's no images, no nothing. You have to type in all the commands to navigate, and it seems pretty intimidating. But the very first lab really gently guides you through the entire process, and you get pretty used to it really fast. But in terms of just general operating systems, for your daily use, honestly, anything's fine as long as you're comfortable with it and it obviously runs well for the tasks you need. So in general, your Windows 10s, your Mac OS, even probably you could probably get away with an iPad nowadays, especially since TAMS actually has computer labs. You could do your program assignments downstairs on the first floor. So yeah, in general, it's basically whatever fits your shoe, whatever fits your bill. Yeah.
So is there a recommended text editor?
Yeah. So obviously, a lot of programmers will be familiar with Vim, which is I believe it's VI improved, and that's a lot of people really like it because of the layout, the shortcuts, and the general. Some people like the aesthetic, but you can change it with plugins. But for beginners, if you're new to Linux, and you're kind of scared of all the things Vim does, like you don't want to memorize it, Nano is what a lot of people use for the Linux servers because once again, it's only text. So Nano is what I recommend to learn just because it's very beginner friendly and you will use it in your computer science labs. But on Windows, it's sort of like in Mac OS. It's basically whatever you want to use. And Linux, I guess, like with the GUI.
Do you have any recommendations for electives?
Yeah, that's another great question because it really depends on what you want to do in your future. Like if you, for example, if you want to become, let's say, a data scientist, you could take statistics, which would be a great elective. Or if you want to go more into like the economic side of computer science, like once again, data science used to predict certain economic features, you could take introduction to macro and microeconomics. But in general, I would recommend mathematics courses just because of how non-linear they are actually. So for math, you take your general calculus sequence, calculus 1 and 2, and then you can take linear algebra, which is incredibly useful for not just, your machine learning, but also for just data science and general future higher level computer science applications. So linear algebra is one I highly recommend. Discrete math might also be something worth considering, especially since it gives you a really good foundation for CSE 2100, which is basically discrete math applied to computer science. So if you want to get ahead, then you can take discrete math, in your second semester. So you'll be absolutely solid and set for CSE 2100. But yeah, once again, it really depends. If you're interested in something, just take the elective. It's not gonna hurt you. But in general, if you just don't know, then I would recommend a math course like linear algebra.
Okay, so should people get any specific hardware?
I mean, basically, some things most people already have. I mean, obviously, a laptop is incredibly useful. Like, oh, I forgot to mention. So, if you do get, when you talk about operating systems, there is one operating system I would advise against, and that is a Chrome OS device. I'm sorry, Google, but your operating system is not very good for programmers because it doesn't allow you. There's no really good way to code on it, and a lot of the software that makes the Linux servers for UNT very accessible is not available on Chrome OS hardware. So basically, if you get a laptop, just get something that does not have Chrome OS, and you're pretty much set. But for like the internal specifications, like your CPU, honestly, anything's really fine. It really depends on your other needs. Like for example, if you like to play video games, your hardware needs should be matching to that because especially for first year assignments, second year assignments, the code will run on basically any hardware. There isn't really any bottom line. So yeah, just get a laptop that does not have Chrome OS and you should be good to go.
So do you have any other tips?
Yeah, so I did mention that we do learn C++, but if you only learn Java or Python, then there's no need to really be scared because a lot of the fundamental programming concepts transfer over, such as integers, doubles, floats, objects, for loops, if else statements. So a lot of those transfer over, and it makes it very easy to actually pick up C++. And especially for those people who haven't learned a language, there's even less. You just don't need to be scared. Like yeah, some of your peers may have learned like, all their programming stuff. They're at isCSO Platinum or whatever, but CSE 1030, all the intro courses, 1000 level courses at UNT are designed for people who do not have any knowledge. So you start from the ground and you build up from there. So like, yeah, if you don't have any programming knowledge, don't be scared about, taking the CS track because, everyone had to start somewhere. And so it's probably better to start sooner than later. But yeah, I guess the general message is don't be scared about CS 1030 because, you got your seniors, your friends, your academic advisors. There's a bunch of people who will be able to help you out even if you do struggle.
Okay, thank you for joining us today, Ben. We hope you guys have learned a lot about this club where you can unleash your creativity and learn all about computer science. Feel free to write any questions in the comments section. And yeah, whether it be web development, hardware, or APIs, CSO has got you covered.